She wasn't feeling well?
Tired, I guess.
Pardon?
She's not feeling too well. So.
Okay, all right. So anyone else missing? Is there someone? No, you said there. Okay, good. Oh, okay. Oh, do you think she's going to come? Should we wait a little bit? Or no, she won't. She's not feeling well. Okay, all right, okay. All right. Okay, going back to what we discussed earlier. Self-centeredness, that like the disadvantage of that particular mind. The harm, I should say, is not merely a disadvantage, it's really harmful. And then, well, first identifying it, and then identifying its harm, its harmful effect, and then cherishing others. But cherishing others doesn't mean, this is, I think, really important to stress it again and again. It doesn't mean, now I'm going to use a Hebrew, Yiddish word, do you become a friar? A sucker. A sucker. It's Yiddish, right? Like you become like a sucker, which means, you know, you become a punching bag, you become a doormat for everyone else. Now you're so sweet, and now you're, you know, let everyone work all over you and do whatever. No, that's not what it means. The opposite. In that, if you really cherish others, you don't want them to do things that harm them. You don't want them to become selfish and greedy, and you stop them when it's necessary. Like, again, I think parents are the best example. You don't want your child to turn into, I don't know, a selfish, whatever, greedy kind of person. So you discipline them when necessary. No, don't act like that. Maybe sometimes verbally strict, or sometimes even physically, as in like, it wants to run on the street, you pull them back, right? I mean, that's violence, pulling them back before they run onto the road. But, I mean, it's a violence in the sense that, like, it looks very violent, let's put it that way. But in actuality, it's to help the child. So therefore, even this homeless, I mean, remember the story? He kicked someone out? I mean, that wasn't like, oh, so cuddly and, you know, smiley. No, his homeless was very scary. His homeless has a very powerful voice, very strong voice. And when he says something loudly, whoa. But it's done with this incredible love and compassion. So cherishing others is a mental state. Externally, the way it manifests, it depends. Because of course, also wisdom is so important. What is good for that person? So cherishing them in the sense of cherishing their happiness, cherishing their well-being, and then of course, not just their short-term happiness, but their long-term happiness. And that may require sometimes strong actions. Actions that from the outside may look, I don't want to say violent, that's already like, but harsh. Yeah, maybe harsh. They may look harsh. But it's for the benefit of that person. If smooth talk, if gentle words don't help, and they sometimes don't, not for children and not for adults. That's extremely important. So oftentimes when we talk about love and compassion, it is misunderstood to refer to the external manifestation of these mental states. And we always think they're like gentle and sweet and kind. Yeah, you're a serial killer, poor you, oh, have some chocolate. Or, you know, it's ridiculous. I'm exaggerating here. But no, you've done something wrong. You need to face the consequences. If you don't do it now, I mean, a compassionate person, if they came across a serial killer and they had the authority to discipline them, put them in prison, of course they would do it. For their own sake and for the sake of others. For their own sake, so protect them from themselves, basically, but also they're going to have to face the consequences of their negative actions. Might as well start now. Might as well start now, that the hardship of prison already does something to purify or exhaust that karma, right? So some hardship, yeah, purify if you want in that case. Absolutely, you have to go to prison. And of course everyone else who's now safe from them, because it's not just about one person, it's about as many people as possible, if not all. Therefore, compassion can be, compassionate action can be gentle and it can be strong, decisive, assertive. Because the well-being of others doesn't just refer to short-term happiness, as in actuality, even more so, well, when you compare the two, if you have to choose, if short-term benefit, long-term benefit, both can be brought about, great. But if you have to choose between the two, short-term, who cares, right? Long-term is important. That's why we go to a dentist. Short-term pain, long-term benefit. That's why we do exercise. Short-term discomfort, depending on who you are, like me. Short-term discomfort, long-term benefit. So many things we do in the short term, it may be uncomfortable, it may be not something we choose to do, but in the long term, it's good for us, so we do it. Brushing our teeth and so forth. Okay. Therefore, don't think that compassion is about becoming a friar, a sucker, a doormat, a punching ball, and so forth. Not at all. Not at all. Not at all. And there are great examples. You see, like when you really have the wish to benefit others, first of all, the cherishing others, and then of course that leads to compassion, you don't care what others think. They like you, don't like you, well, who cares? If your focus is totally on others, because sometimes we don't do certain things, we know it's not right, but then maybe they don't like us, or we get into trouble, or the self is somehow involved. But when that is out of the way, when at some point our self-centered attitude is at least controlled to such a degree that we don't care, then we do what's right, no matter the consequences. But the other person will also feel it's not personal, it's not to harm them, it's not because this person feels resented. They know it's done for their benefit. So usually there is no backlash. Could be, but it's less likely to have a backlash when a huge argument comes. So like some of our teachers, yeah, they can be, strong and strict and all that. But usually it's not like, oh, and actually it goes as far as this. When it's a qualified Lama, they say, even if he hits you, if the Dharma beats you up, it's a blessing. Ooh, now that's taking it we have to be careful here. If it's a qualified Lama, it's possible, seeing that some negative karma is about to ripen. So, okay, if I just, take a stick and just strike them, not with like long-term damage or anything, but just, or, I'm rude, I'm harsh to them, that karma is now already has manifested in that form and not in a worse form. It's possible. But this is very tricky. We have to be very, very careful here, because the moment it's not a fully qualified Lama, you get yourself into great trouble. Therefore, usually the Lamas don't manifest in that way. It's quite rare that they are harsh or that they are wrathful. That's the word that they use, like wrathful, as in like, seems they're really angry, but actually they're not. It's quite rare. I would say it's rare. It's much. No, most of the time they're very gentle and soft-spoken. Yeah. And so this is again true, the analogy or the similarity to parents. Most parents don't shout the whole day and are upset and so forth. No, only when it's necessary. Okay. Anyway, those are the qualities. That's what it means to cherish others. And what are the qualities of that? What are the advantages? Oh, there's so many of them. First of all, it reduces all our problems. That's why we do it. It reduces our problem. The more we cherish others, and of course the more we cherish others, the more our self-centeredness is weakened, the happier we get. The more we cherish others, the less problems we have. But it has to be a sincere. Our self-centered mind can wiggle its way in, and when it does so, it seems like, oh, I'm so altruistic. But I'm not at all. Here again, mindfulness, so important. Being mindful, being attentive. Am I fooling myself? Am I trying to fool others? And we try to fool others, yeah, of course. The good thing is you can fool some people sometimes, but you can't fool them all the time, to quote someone famous. Right? You know the song, you can fool some people sometimes. Is it Bob Marley? You can fool some people sometimes, but you can't fool all the people all the time. It's a song, a reggae song. God, you guys are too young, you don't even know this. Right? It's Bob Marley, isn't it? I don't want to, I'm not supposed to sing, so I can't. I don't know how to sing anyway, so, but there's a melody to it. Yeah, it's a really good song, and I love that. There's some songs that stick in my mind. So, you know, when I'm trying to fool others, or other people try to fool others, it comes to mind, because sooner or later we know. You can fool some people sometimes, but you can't fool all the people all the time. The other song I really like is the song, you pick yourself up and keep trying. Pick yourself up and keep trying. I only remember these words. It's a female singer, maybe Beyonce or someone, I don't know. It keeps saying, like, just pick yourself up and keep trying. That's a really good line, I think. You know, things go wrong, well, pick yourself up and keep trying. Don't give up. Yeah? Anyway, so sometimes there are some good advice in some songs. Never mind those songs. But the point is, so cherishing others is the first step towards having more happiness and more well-being. But it has to be observed. We have to be careful about not allowing the self-centered mind to now disturb it, such that we have a few seconds of real cherishing others. Self-centered mind comes in, distorts it, and we feel miserable, and stuff goes wrong, and we're exhausted, and we wonder why cherishing others doesn't work. Well, because it wasn't the real deal. It was there for a few seconds. The thing is this, as you may notice yourself, these minds, compassion, cherishing others, patience, and so forth, we can generate them. That's not that difficult and impossible. But what is difficult to hold on to them, to make them last. They're there for a few seconds, and then they disappear. And we have to do it all over again. And that way, it just takes a lot of familiarization, again and again, going back to it, again and again, generating it, and doing it again, and doing it again. I'll lose it, right? For days on end, I don't even think about it. And then bringing the mind back to generating, okay, who am I really cherishing? Who am I? Am I cherishing others, their happiness? Am I wishing for them to be happy? It's just a matter of hanging in there. That's all we can do. That's all we can do. Yes?
I saw a short video in the YouTube where Rubina Kelsang,
Rubina
that she's going to jail and talk with prisoners
Mm.
that was killing them.
Mm.
And, you can see their reaction and their relationship only from that she listened and
Mm-hmm.
like explain about death.
Mm.
She talked with prisons that
On death row. On death row. They're on death row. Mm-hmm.
Well,
Prisoners on
this
death
is,
row.
the point of view, how it's changed, this is amazing.
Yeah, this is actually a really good example.
Is also cherishing from others? Or?
Yeah, this is a good example. Rubina Curtin's prisoner project, Prisoners Liberation Project, which doesn't literally mean liberate prisoners, but eternal liberation. Rubina Curtin, first of all, I mean, she's the perfect person for the job. She's a tough cookie, but incredible. I'm a huge fan of Rubina. I mean, she can come across as really harsh, but I think it comes out of this compassionate mind. She's so straightforward and incredible. So a lot of Westerners greatly benefit from her style. And especially when she started this prisoners project. I mean, there's this tiny lady in comparison to many of the prisoners who, you know, usually, well, they don't have much to do in prison. Oftentimes they do a lot of weightlifting, so they're like really big guys, scary guys. And she's right in front of them, and she doesn't take anything. But she's so skillful, talking to them, gentle when gentle is required, forcefully when forceful is required. And she's changed a lot of people around. She's introduced them to meditation. Death row, I wasn't even aware of that, but she's also talked to prisoners who are about to die, but preparing them. That is such a kind thing, because those are usually the ones that no one wants anything to do with. They're like at the periphery of society. They're like the outcasts. You know, once they're in prison, people forget about them. And there's a sense they deserve it, and well done, and, you know, out of sight, out of mind. And it's terrible. In some of the prisons in this world, it's really terrible. The prison systems, yeah, some are better, some are worse. Some are maybe too light, but some are definitely really harsh, depending on where it is. And it's all about, especially those who are not on death row, that will be reintroduced to society possibly at some point. Well, you don't want them to reoffend. That's the problem. And therefore, this prisoners project is really, really wonderful. And it's not just Buddhist, there are also Muslim and Christian prison projects, and they're, I'm pretty sure, just as wonderful. But talking about this Buddhist prison project, yeah, so get people to meditate, to study the Dharma, if they're interested, if that is their kind of interest.
It was like crying. They was crying because they face their problems and they feel
Right.
So it was a very tough man, and suddenly crying like a baby.
Yeah, so helping them somehow to face their own fears and to face a lot of stuff. And I'm pretty sure usually the perpetrators are victims. I mean, they were victims first, and then they turn into perpetrators, oftentimes, not always. So they've undergone a lot of trauma in their childhood. And then later on, they're not able to ever work through it. Then they choose a criminal life and get in prison, and they never work through their stuff and their emotions. And so, yeah, Rubina is doing a great job. And of course, there's also modern psychology, there are other methods. But this project, which does work together, as far as I know, with modern psychologists or modern means of therapy, it's amazing. This is really incredible. I mean, prisoners, we kind of like, yeah, people who are homeless or people, yeah, that's like, okay, that seems to make sense. But prisoners? Yeah, that's beautiful. It's actually really good. Yeah, that's definitely cherishing. That's part of cherishing others. And in a way, if they're going to be released, it's going to benefit us. If they're able to work through their troubles, their emotions, their fears, their aggression, whatever it is, work through it and become a responsible member of society and refrain from harming others. So it's even for us, it's very helpful. Beautiful. So much that can be done. Yeah, the Prisoners Project is really beautiful. There's also a documentary about that. I think it was done by her nephew, but I've never seen it. Her nephew is apparently someone who makes documentaries, movies, I don't know, and he made one about her, probably called Rubina. Wow, she's a force of nature. She's incredible. So honest, so fast. Her mind is so fast. And I actually listened to some teachings of hers. In the beginning, I was curious about all the hype around her. And she hasn't really done like formal studies, right? She hasn't done formal studies in the sense that she's done a Geshe program and all that. But she's got incredible insights into the Dharma. The way she explains things, I'm like, wow, where does that come from? So studying the Dharma is one tool, but some people just have these natural insights, and she does. I mean, she must have done a lot of practice in her previous life and in this life as well, no doubt about it. And some people have a bit of a hard time with that because they expect a monk or nun to be kind of soft-spoken and smiley, and she's not always that. But honestly, that is really amazing. She's really amazing in that way. I like that honesty, that rawness, direct nature. I really like that. I don't know whether I want to be the object of her wrath, but yeah, it's beautiful. She's a really amazing person. Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. So if you have the chance to listen to her teachings, I'm sure you find something online. Please do.
She's in the Tibetan house now doing some courses.
She's where?
Tibetan house,
The
but online.
Tibet House
Yeah.
in Delhi.
Yeah.
In Delhi, very good.
But online. Yeah.
Not in person, like people who are in Delhi cannot listen to her, only online? No, she will be also teach. Only online, interesting. Okay, well, I'm glad Geshe Dorje Damdul discovered Rabina. I mean, he's of course in charge.
No, this is not Tibet.
It's not Tibet House?
Tibet, it's Tushita. No?
Are they Tushita?
Tibet.
Yeah, I see. Yeah.
Like Geshe Dorje Damdul's Tibet House?
Yeah.
Wow, very nice.
I didn't hear about
Yeah, I'm surprised actually.
Most of the time this is 4 days, something like this.
Oh, that is nice. Yeah, great. Because for a Tibetan, it's a little unusual. Besides, I mean, also the fact, like when she does the prayers, she has a church choir kind of voice. When she does the prayers, it sounds like she's singing in church. That's already like, whoops. But no, that's not important. It's her style that can be, initially you go, whoa, but she's really amazing, really. I'm a great fan of Rabina Creighton. Fan, I mean, a student, I should say. I shouldn't call myself a fan, but a fan as well.
Check after to be sure that this was Tibetan house, but
Yeah.
pretty sure. because
Tibet House, yeah.
maybe
Tibet House, yeah. Okay, great. Thank you for sharing that. That's good. Yeah. All right, so the qualities of cherishing others. It's the best for others and it's the best for ourselves. And it's mental, most important. Okay. Any questions so far? No, right? Oh, yes, please.
You said that we should not just be a punching bag. So how would healthy boundaries look like even when we're compassionate?
This girl, she's not here. I think she would have asked that question. Can someone report back to her, please? Yes, that's a good question. Healthy boundaries. How do they, yes. Yeah, it's not easy. That's not easy. That's really difficult. Self-confidence needs to be built up. But I think if we do what we feel is right, if we are really guided by, okay, the self-centered mind, I try to reduce it to the best of my ability, versus the mind of cherishing others, if we give it some time, practice that continuously, I think self-confidence will grow naturally. It's no longer about others liking us or not. Oftentimes, when we grow up in the modern world, or in the not modern, but probably I guess we could say in the modern world, in which we all live now, where how many friends we have on Facebook and how many likes and so forth is very important. So status is becoming very, very important. Has always been important, but now there's certain ways through social media where it becomes more obvious. So wanting to be liked, wanting to be, and self-confidence or the lack thereof has become a huge issue that especially people, young people who don't have that confidence yet, like teenager, for instance, feeling inadequate when they get bullied online. It's terrible. I mean, there are people committing suicide because of this bullying going on, which is totally anonymous oftentimes. So how do you build self-confidence? Well, we need to learn, and that's not easy because we're so conditioned in that way, that what is most important, what makes us a good or a valuable person, a person, what's the word? Someone really worth being popular is being a kind person. It's not about how we look. It's not about, I mean, okay, it doesn't harm to look good. It doesn't harm to have an attract, and I wouldn't say attractive appearance, but an appearance that attracts people. So that's why the lamas usually look in a way, like they look beautiful oftentimes, right? And some of them being very highly advanced, they can basically choose, okay, it goes into some kind of mystical explanations, but they have so much control over their mind, they can basically also choose their rebirth and what they look like. And, you know, like pleasant external appearances are definitely chosen. Not the most important part, just because, you know, if they're like, people are already attracted to their external, they have like a charismatic face and so forth, then they're much more likely to draw people in. That's only the very first step. It seems to be a little counterproductive in this modern world where everyone is obsessed with their external. But it's done for different reasons, not just to look pretty and be admired, but rather to attract people, to get people to listen to their incredibly valuable message. But yeah, so as young people to develop that self-confidence, I guess going back to His Holiness's project of introducing these ideas of loving kindness and mindfulness in schools where children learn when they're relatively young, what makes you so special is that you are like that you can do this, that you have this ability. So they learn this self-confidence, they discover within themselves this incredible ability of being loving, of being kind, of helping others. But someone needs to introduce it to them. It's not like the environment necessarily supports that, depending on, you know, what school you're in. So if you learn from your teachers, kind of like being kind, being compassionate, and you have fun in that. And you know, there's one thing I thought was quite interesting with the Emory students. Many of them, although that was Emory, but they didn't all come from Emory. They came from different universities. Many of them were from Emory, but many were from others as well. And before that, they had been in many high schools. And one thing I noticed, that in general, they were really kind to each other, kinder than we were in high school. And there was also a Swedish girl as one of the students. She studied at Emory, and she said she noticed the same thing. She said, this seems to be something, and correct me if I'm wrong, but in the United States, this seems to be stressed more in high schools, being kind to each other. Not every high school, it probably also depends where, but this kind of being supportive of each other, that's what they reported back. They said, well, yeah, our teachers very much put emphasis on that and don't bully each other, and they paid extra attention because it had happened many times. And that doesn't mean that there's no problem. Yes, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think Emory is like an elite university, so a lot of the people that go to that school grew up probably with really solid families, families maybe with money that have the time to really teach this. So I wouldn't say it's necessarily representative of everyone.
No.
That's a very small, specific demographic that has the privilege to go to a school.
All right. So it had to do with...
I think, to a degree.
Yeah, all right, that makes sense. Okay, so they were part of a kind of a certain wealth, part of a certain part of society.
All those people are like super polite. I'm not saying that.
No,
in the
no.
same sentence,
But to be honest, when I traveled to the US many years ago, actually my mom came with me, and I went to different centers for a while. I also visited Emory. And my mom, both of us thought, wow, people are so much friendlier than in Germany, right? And in Germany, we have that kind of, we kind of sometimes look down on Americans like, oh, it's so superficial, you know? They're just superficial. And I was thinking, I don't care superficial. They're nicer. It's not like I meet Germans and they become my best friends right away, and just because so it's not like they're less superficial. But it's really not like that. I can't speak for other countries, but in Germany, sometimes people are really rude, I find. Whereas in the US, I'd be like, especially in Washington, D.C., you know, like my mom and I be like walking around with like, either in our phones, we were looking for something, or we even had maps, you know. And then people would stop, like, can I help you? What are you looking for? And in the train, as a nun, people got up and gave me a seat. What? That never happened to me here. Or with Tibetans, never. So it's really, I shouldn't say never, But anyway, no, really, I don't remember. But the thing is, in America, in Washington, D.C., people actually got up. They were older than me. And I was like, and they kind of pointed at my robes or said something to the effect like, oh, you're a nun, you should be sitting. Wow, such kindness. Only in New York wasn't. New Yorkers weren't as, I mean, they weren't just as, they were a little bit more direct and weren't, but the friendliness in Atlanta, oh my gosh, such incredibly, the South, where Emery is, I lived with this family and every morning we took a walk and she bumped into people and I kept thinking, oh, these are her old friends. But she met them for the first time. They were talking to each other like they were best friends. Really, I really thought that was beautiful. That was really beautiful. So anyway, you're right. In the universities, it depends your background, what university, what area you're from. It's such a huge country. You can't generalize. Yeah.
I was going to say, I guess it's relative. I'm thinking to other universities, but to the rest of the world in terms of just like that American amiableness, friendliness, lightheartedness. Yeah, you see that more, I think. Yeah,
it's true. And I think in America, because they make it work, that there's so many people from so many different cultures come together, work together, are raised together. I guess that you also need a certain degree of tolerance for each other. And I'm not saying that every American, no, don't get me wrong. I'm not a fan of everything American, but that is really something I admired and I enjoyed. I enjoyed walking up to people, and that friendliness and openness was very, very, very heartwarming, yeah. Anyway, but going back to what I was trying to say. How did I get there? Do you remember?
More self-confidence.
Self-confidence, yes. Self-confidence. So how do you build that kind of self-confidence? How do you build that? And I think we can actually really learn to build it through this. And then, if we have, like let's say, you really build confidence, you've done the right thing, and that's all that counts. People like you, people don't like you. Maybe in the spur of the moment they won't, but you feel good with yourself. And the thing is also, we learn to be happy with ourselves, to be alone and be comfortable with ourselves. Oftentimes, we're not used to being alone, and then of course we depend more on others in a way like we can't really be, and then we want to be liked, and popularity and all that becomes much more important. So at a certain level, as a teenager, of course, that's part of growing up. And of course, there's a lot we can learn through certain programs such as sea learning. But let's say from the age of 20 onwards, so to learn to be happy with yourself, to love yourself as well for who you are. And that's also part of cherishing yourself, not at the expense of others, but also realizing you're equally valuable as everyone else, and you're also allowed to make mistakes. Okay, so one thing I need to stress at this moment, especially since you asked that question. What about loving ourselves? Is that mentioned in Buddhism? Not much. Simply because ancient Indians didn't have a problem with that, and Tibetans didn't have that traditionally either. Right? Indians, before this 21st century, the modern kind of way of life that puts so much pressure on people and your status and your blah. No, I'm pretty sure in the past, before Buddhism went to Tibet, for instance, no, people didn't have an issue with loving themselves. That was not a problem. The pressure was different, if there was any at all, and Tibetans either. And there's, of course, this one famous account of how Tibetans have traditionally no idea what self-hatred means. So I don't know whether, this is usually given as an example. When His Holiness met with scientists and Geshe Jinpa was translating for him, someone mentioned, one of the psychologists mentioned self-hatred. And His Holiness was like, what? And so I asked the translator, what is self-hatred? Right? And the translator said something, and they had this discussion, so they had to take a break for the translator to let His Holiness know what is meant with self-hatred. Now that basically gave us a good sense. From that we can understand that Tibetans traditionally don't have self-hatred. Because they come from very laid-back families, very strong togetherness of the family members, the whole village, right? Every child is the child of everyone. So not like nowadays, don't you talk to my child, don't you scold my child, right? In Germany, you cannot, I mean, forget about hugging them and stuff, of course you can't do. I mean, that's really dangerous nowadays, and we need to be careful about that. But it's not about that, but even telling a child off. Tibetans tell other children off, and the mothers and fathers don't mind if it is appropriate. Ooh, in Germany, people get really offended. This is my child. This is not your job to tell of my child, right? And that, again, creates that separation between people. But in old Tibetan societies, in the traditional societies, yeah, like it took a village to raise a child, basically, and everyone was involved in that. But people felt accepted and loved for who they are. So you have a natural self-confidence. You never feel you're not enough because you don't have enough likes or whatever. So they don't have that traditionally. Tibetans don't have that issue. Therefore, it's not mentioned in the texts as much, if at all. But it needs to now, the modern commentaries need to include that because we have that problem. And Tibetans do too. Sooner or later, they'll have the same problem if they don't already have it, those raised in the West, raised in the US or raised in other places in Europe and so forth. So they do have that problem. Therefore, self-love. Self-love versus self-centeredness. Very different. Self-centeredness considers the I to be more important. Therefore, more important in that it needs to be successful. It needs to succeed. And when that doesn't happen, we hate ourselves. Self-hatred comes from self-centeredness. It's too strong self-centeredness. Where, yes, my good friend, my best friend, my neighbor, they're allowed to fail. I'm not allowed to fail. Right? It's really interesting. And that doesn't make us bad people. It's just, we have that mind that gives us a lot of trouble. And if it happens to be really strong, then we put a lot of pressure on ourselves. We become our worst enemy. Terrible enemy. So people suffering burnout because they feel like they have to push a little more and do a little better. And yeah, that's what leads to burnout. Therefore, love for ourselves means to allow ourselves to make mistakes, to be okay with it, to be just as comfortable with ourselves when we make mistakes, to understand there's room for improvement, but to not be judgmental. Like, people are oftentimes much harsher with themselves than with others. You're such an idiot. Again, I remember when I first started learning about the Dharma and trying to put it into practice, I would get so mad at getting mad. I got mad with someone, I was angry with someone, and then I got angry with myself. It just made it worse. Didn't help at all. So to become gentler with yourself, you can't be gentle with others if you're not with yourself. You can't be loving if you don't start with yourself. It's not mentioned in the text because it didn't need to be said. It didn't need to be explained because people did it anyway. So that's why Tibetans, they have this beautiful, traditionally, and again I'm saying it could be changing. In fact, I met once a Tibetan, and it was the weirdest thing. I met a Tibetan who was sent to one of the Tibetan children villages, or SOS children villages in Switzerland. And they were very different. You could tell they were insecure, they were not as comfortable in themselves because they were raised in a different setting. They were foster kids. I mean, they even had parents in Tibet, but it kind of went wrong. Tibetans now say that it all went wrong. They sent a lot of very young children to Switzerland. So it's one thing to send a lot of Tibetans to India where there are other Tibetans who take them in and they're part of their own culture and they feel they're part of something, and it's not as traumatic to be separated from your parents. versus sending a whole group of little children to a totally different country, Switzerland, where people are not traditionally kind of, meet someone and you right away, become best friends. They're a lot more reserved. And these children, they saw very quickly and they discontinued the program of sending little children to Switzerland. But I met one young man who was so different than other Tibetans. And then I realized the difference. How Tibetans are usually quite confident. You talk to them, they don't want to show off, right? They're just themselves. They're very matter of fact, calm, together, pleasant, and humble. Really, they are. It's very pleasant. It's sometimes hard to make any contact because they stay among themselves, especially in this exile community, so they don't really want to hang out with Westerners so much because they have their own communities and there's sometimes misunderstandings. They don't know how to read our expressions. Tattoos? Oh yeah? I don't even see them, but it's strange for them. That's true. Yeah, okay, I get that. All right, yeah, I'm used to it now, but yeah, okay. That makes sense. It's strange for them. But sometimes it may just be a reason to get to know them because they start talking to you. They don't talk to me. Nothing, just a Westerner. But anyway, so they do stay with themselves, like to stay among themselves. But still, what I'm trying to say is they don't have that issue. They're really comfortable with themselves. And this we need to learn. And learning this is a lot about it's okay the way we are. Don't let others suggest you have to be in this way. It's okay to make mistakes. We deserve to be happy. Everyone deserves to be happy, including ourselves. But we need to look for happiness in the right places. And trying to be, successful or trying to be, what's the point? What's the point, right? I mean, being famous, for instance, what's the point? Yeah, so people working towards being famous, having lots of friends or whatever. What's the point? When you die, you don't even know it was you. Let's say you now find a cure to cancer and you become the most famous person in the world. When you die and you're reborn, you don't even know it was you. So what's the big deal, right? It doesn't matter in the long term. So like being popular, famous, and whatever, what is so important in the West. Many of these things, to learn that this is not important and to be comfortable with who you are. Being a kind and humble person, that's something to be proud of. Not many people in this world are like that nowadays. Yeah. So once you have that, then you become more skillful with setting boundaries. So to, of course, check, am I just being impatient with this person or are they getting too much? And then you can still say, no, look, don't do this. This is too much now, right? You don't have to shout at them. You don't have to become aggressive. Sometimes what is really helpful is when you want to criticize someone, if you really want to even tell them, there is a skillful way to go about it. So what you could do is, for instance, well, first of all, remember what it feels like when someone criticizes you. Usually we feel misunderstood, as if someone only looks at the negative and forgets the positive. Because there's more to us than just the negative. And therefore, that is true for others as well, which is why people get defensive. But I, to kind of bring balance into the picture. Well, if you want to criticize someone, we could start off with praising them for what they've done right? Saying, look, I've never really told you this, for instance, but you're doing an amazing job, right? You're doing a really good job. And then you could say, there's one thing I noticed, but never mind. I did that with my sister once because she's so defensive if I criticize her. So I had to tell her something. Never mind, I don't think she listens to this, but don't want to say it. But anyway, it's something minor. It wasn't that bad, but the whole family was kind of found it really difficult to deal with that. It was just, she wasn't aware of it. That was it. Minor thing. But anyway, I wanted to tell her about it. I knew if it comes from her sister, I had to be careful. So actually what I started off with, I did exactly that. I started telling her everything I admired about her. And she was so pleased, you know, oh, thank you. You know, she felt comfortable. You could tell she relaxed, right? She felt understood, she found seen. And then I said, well, there's one thing I noticed, but never mind. And she was like, what? I said, nah, it's not that important. It's all good. But she wanted to know now, because now she felt safe. She felt, you know, I didn't misunderstand it. I saw her for the good things she had done, and she did. I wasn't lying. And she wanted to know. And I said, look, you know, what I noticed, and I think others have too, this one thing. And she was like, I can change that. That's easy, I can change that. And she did. I tell you what it is, it's very easy. She invited people over. It's not difficult, she wouldn't mind. She invited people over, but she wasn't ready to receive them. She was still vacuum cleaning or on the phone, you know, so she always invited people over for breakfast, but she never prepared anything. So people were like, we were just sitting there waiting. So rude. So I told her, I said, look, have you ever noticed this anywhere else? No one does that, right? And she's like, yeah. But she didn't feel threatened. And she changed it the next time. It was all ready. I don't think she ever did it again. Yeah. So it was that easy. I thought, wow, that's easy. But it's all about putting yourself into the other person's shoe, basically. If someone suddenly, I've worked hard, I gave my very best, and all I receive is criticism, I feel like I want to put things right. I want to explain myself, right? It's just a natural reaction. And maybe sometimes it goes beyond that natural. But to not even come to that point. We can say things and say, look, I really appreciate, and there's so much good in so many people. There's not anything. I mean, I know some people I also find personally challenging, but I can easily talk about their good qualities. There's so many of them. The problem is when my resentment starts obsessing about the negative, because that's what resentment does. It brings it up again and again and again, and you see only the negative in that person. And with that resentment, if you talk to them, they know. Because the moment there's resentment, so this we need to control. And it's actually very effective to start with the positive aspects, because naturally, you like them. As you hear yourself talking about the good qualities of that person, you like that person. You can't help it. So that's why I think either as part of a preparation of telling them, make sure you don't have resentment. Because, and also what's the other thing, that something Geshe Toten Pasang was once said, automatically when we criticize someone, resentment arises, because we're used to criticizing out of resentment. We're used to it. Which is why we have to be super careful when we criticize someone, that there's no resentment. And I think a good way to do this is to start with the positive aspects. It softens your own view of that person, so there's no resentment when you tell them. And then they can accept it, because they know it's not extreme. The same we should do, sometimes, I mean, like talking about other people, okay? We do that. And sometimes it's just, there's no other reason than just feeling better. Sometimes the worst kind of reasons for us doing it, wanting other people not to like them. That's a terrible, we should not do that. It really harms us more than it harms anyone else. Secondly, we're so annoyed with them and we just want to talk about it. We just want to get it out. We're so annoyed. Also not a good reason. But there are times when it may be good to discuss it. To say, look, watch out with this person. There's certain things you may not know, but be careful around them, right? Just to warn other people so that there's no conflict. That is totally acceptable. But start off with good qualities. Or bring in the good. Always say something nicely about them, right? Tell the person, look, I really admire them for that. There's one thing I find difficult, and you may notice yourself. Maybe you could deal with it in this way. Like for your boss, for instance, every now and then he may get annoyed and he may lash out. But usually he's a really good person and he has this quality. That I think is fair. That's skillful, it's fair. And also the other person gets a balanced view. Because that's how our mind works. You know intellectually that they must have good qualities, but this person, the only thing they say about them is negative, and you take that on and you believe, oh, they're really like crappy. We believe that. We don't know anything more about them. So it's our personal responsibility to then also talk about the good qualities. To always make a point, take that time to say something positive, never just say something negative about them. And in that way, you can be truthful with other people about this particular person, making sure they don't dislike them. But even in your criticism of someone, if you tell them off one day, yeah, then you can even tell them in that way. And then boundaries, like, you know, if they come all the time and they annoy you, you just walk away. You can have cherishing for other people and ignore them. It's not out of anger. It's not out of anger. It's out of protecting yourself and protecting the other person. Walking away is okay, right? Every time they see you, they get out of control, I don't know, for whatever reason, they're suddenly acting in a way that harms themselves. Keep your distance. That's also a good way. Sometimes just not ignoring them when they talk to you, not talking back. That would be really rude. So not in that way, but to just try to avoid them. In fact, as monks and nuns, for instance, a lot of our, you see, like our vows, the vows as monks and nuns are not mental vows. They're physical and verbal. Mental vows are much harder. So it's not like you're not allowed to think about such and such. There's no vow, don't think about that. It's better not to, but there's no vow. Once you get to the higher categories of vows, so this is the foundation for everything. And the more difficult vows, they actually tell you what to think, right? Don't give up your compassion and love for all sentient beings. Whoa, that's a big one. Anyway, don't give up your bodhicitta, in other words. That is different. But those vows, they're about physical and physical and verbal restraint. And a lot of it is just staying away. Staying away. You stay away. That's why monasteries are usually away from lay people. Because, you see, it's a bit like a greenhouse. A greenhouse. You have a very tiny, sensitive, not very tough tomato plant. Are you going to plant it in the middle of like a field where the monsoon is going to crush it? No. No. It needs to grow fast. It needs to grow stronger. So you put it in a greenhouse, protected from the environment. Becoming a monk and nun is a little bit like putting, especially when you're new, putting yourself into a greenhouse. So you stay away. At some point, it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. At some point, for instance, so monks and nuns don't mingle, usually. They try to keep a distance, because that's our tendency to like someone who looks like us and has similar interests, right? It happens. You're attracted to someone possibly doing the same thing. It could happen that monks and nuns, and it has happened in the past, that a Western monk and a Western monk disrobed, a Tibetan monk and a Tibetan nun disrobed. It happened many times in Tibet. So you stay away from each other. Keep that distance until you know you're strong enough. Doesn't matter. Nothing is going to, you know, and that's usually with as many years as possible. It's an age thing as well. At some point, you really don't know. It's like hormones have changed, and it all changes anyway. But in the meantime, also, it can, you know, it changes. It changes as well. So here in this case, you just stay away. And that's acceptable. That's acceptable, but that's just a temporary solution. In the long term, of course, you try to learn to control your mind. Now, for instance, if there's someone who always annoys us, just stay away. Stay away. Don't ignore them. Don't be rude to them that they notice. But if they trigger you, if you know, oh, in their presence I'm going to get really upset, then don't hang out too much with them. Protect your own mind. Does that make sense? Yeah, go ahead.
So let's say a monk and nun mingle by accident or whatever, and they fall in love and they disrobe, but they remain good students of Buddhism as lay people. Is that considered like still really bad? Or like how? Because you would think.
Depends how you ask, who you ask.
Yeah.
I personally think it's not. If they disrobed in such a way that they didn't break their vows, I have my own view, but just the other day I talked to a Tibetan nun who's very, 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 very used to Westerners. She's in fact knows perfect English. She's a Tibetan nun, really, really well established in the FPMT, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, for instance. And I told her my view, and she was horrified by my view. I personally feel, of course, it's better to stay monk or nun. I think personally, I think it's better. Oftentimes, psychologically, it's better for people because they feel bad after they gave back their vows. You did it for your whole life, and it didn't. And many monks and nuns do remain the majority, I would say. So it's like, you know, a divorce. No one feels happy with the divorce. It's usually painful, and there's a lot of. So similarly here, it does create a lot of pain usually for the person themselves. I know some monks and nuns who disrobed, and they were so unhappy afterwards. They've so regretted what they did. Therefore, I think it's better to stay together. But it may happen, right? We're just human. And there's no need to break the vow. There's no need. You can give it back. So never break it. Don't break it. Give it back. If you know, like if you have, for instance, intercourse with another person, you break your vow. Well, just before you do, give it back. You can even make a phone call.
So that's
possible.
So that's okay if you give it back before you.
Wait. Generally, in terms of the Vinaya, it is. Yeah, it's. But okay, it depends on, like, traditionally in Tibet. Oh no, oh my God, a monk and a nun disrobing. Even when I first came here, you know, someone said, "Oh, you see this person? She used to be a nun." It was always mentioned. Used to be monk, disrobed. Was always mentioned. So it's like attached to their name. Oh, this is Tenzin. We used to be a monk. That has changed now. It's not like, it may come up in conversation, but it's not like you introduce to them, and not in front of them, of course, but it's not like you introduce to them by another person, like, oh, this is such and such, and that is kind of attached. I personally have a view, and I said, like, Tibetans don't really agree with that. I say if someone has disrobed, they have a really important part to play in society, I find. Especially Westerners, having practiced the Dharma, because now they can teach Dharma Westerners, and people can relate to them as lay people better. But they also did the monks and nuns thing, so they know both sides. See, most Dharma students nowadays are lay, which is why, if, as a lay person, therefore, they can relate to you better. They ask you things that they wouldn't ask us, for instance. You know, it's just, there's a bit of a distance there because of our vows, which is why I think many times, like, when I see Westerners in Dharma centers in the West who used to be monks and nuns, I'm always thinking, great. They can answer all the questions about what it's like to be monk or a nun, plus they know the lay side. People can relate to them. I really like it. To me, that's 2 in 1. That's a good one. But like I said, I shared that view with the Tibetan nun, and she was like, no, that is so bad, right? There was no way she agreed. Yeah. So yeah, it's different views. Nowadays, there are a lot of ex-Namgyal monks that used to be monks of Namgyal Monastery, his homelessness monastery. They disrobed, and now they work for the monastery. There's one who's very, very active. He does incredible work. He's one of the nicest people I know. He was a monk once. He met this. He has the most wonderful Tibetan, I think she's Tibetan wife. She is the nicest person. So no surprise, he got together with her. And yeah, it's no problem. It's no problem. Things have changed. Views not always, but things really have changed. There are a lot of monks who have disrobed, a lot of nuns who have disrobed. And yeah, oftentimes they also do well. Okay. But the point is really going back to your question. Yeah, it's 3 o'clock. Going back to your question of how to set boundaries. Well, as I said, that is important. So it needs courage to be assertive. And assertive doesn't mean rude. To be assertive, right? You can just say, no, enough, okay? That's okay, that's enough now. no, I don't think that's okay, and you just turn away. You don't even have to explain much. You can do that, right? So we can all do that. Okay? So that is part of that kind of self-confidence. Yeah, and we need to learn that, no matter who we are. Yeah. You do it with your children as well. I mean, we set boundaries to children. But of course, they're not children. There's a certain respect that goes along with it. Respect is also another one that I find really, really important, to have respect for people, no matter who they are. And sometimes when we have friends, the respect can get lost. There's no respect between each other. So then we get too close, and we can easily lash out at them. That, I think, is a problem, right? We kind of easily speak our mind. I think it's very important to keep a very healthy respect, to have that respect. The way I don't want to be talked like that, so I don't talk to them like that. And sometimes we've lost that respect. In the West, it's oftentimes, oh, respect is old-fashioned. It's like, you're so old and old-fashioned kind of thing. No, I think even nowadays, that however non-old-fashioned, however modern you are, this respect is really important. And it's good for friendship as well. If you have like a healthy respect for that person, you don't right away lash out. But at the same time, it's okay to also say, no, this is too much, and kind of set the boundaries. Does that make sense? It's easily said, but hard to do. It takes some time. Okay. Anyway, so cherishing others, that is the way to find happiness. So cherishing or being self-centered is the entrance way to problems. Cherishing others equally is the door to, it's the entrance to happiness. All we can do is experiment, investigate whether that's true or not. But then the next step is self and others are equal. To understand, so we went through identifying self-centeredness, understanding the disadvantages of self-centeredness, and then the disadvantages of, or the qualities of cherishing, the advantages of cherishing others. Yeah? So the qualities of that, and therefore cherishing others. But first, no, understanding the qualities of cherishing others. That's most important first. So those are the first three. It's not yet cherishing others, but understanding the qualities. And then the fourth one is to understand that self and I are equal. No, self and others are equal, sorry. Self and others are equal. Yeah? Because right now, we feel I'm more important. We feel I'm more important, and that's our problem. So we have to undo that. In the same way as we grew used to that, we familiarized ourselves with that and are now so conditioned to think that, we can undo it. There are enough examples of people who don't feel that way. And they're not necessarily found just in Buddhist circles. I mean, there's some amazing beings of the past. Mother Teresa, Rajiv Gandhi, Martin Luther King, who gave up their own well-being. I don't know whether they had no self-cherishing or self-centeredness, but at least a lot less than others. Like in the way in which they, and I don't know them personally, so I could be wrong, but from the little that I know about them, it was all about others. Working for others' freedoms, for others' well-being, and so forth. Right? So anyone can do it, can learn it, and they did learn it. Possibly in a previous life, but still. All right, so therefore, self and others are equal. So we have to get a deep sense of that equality, that others are just as important. And in terms of numbers, really more important. Honestly, like each single person, usually it's said that all sentient beings are equally important. But when it's about just I and then the rest, well, although we're equally important, but in terms of numbers, it makes sense. You know, like this is how what is it called? What is this called in English? there's a word for it, like when you have, let's say, a lot of injured people, 5 of them are mortally injured or very seriously injured, and the others are not as seriously injured, and the 5 will probably die, the rest won't, so you pay more attention to those who have a greater chance of survival. What's that called?
Triage.
Triage, that's right, triage. Oh, that's the word, yeah. So triage, so we have like that idea of like a triage where you actually try to benefit as many people as possible, even at the expense sometimes of others, because you know, they have to make a choice. It's terrible. It's and I don't want to be one of those who has to be sacrificed, but it just makes sense, doesn't it? For the greater good, that kind of saying. And in that way, therefore, if we think of ourselves and others, then it's really, the choice should really be, I mean, the emphasis should be more on others in terms of numbers. Does that make sense? That's only on our own personal attitude. That doesn't make us not equally important to every individual person, but just in terms of our own attitude. But that doesn't mean neglecting ourselves. Very important. So there's a fine balance. But why are we equal? There are different reasons for that. First of all, we have a sense I'm more important because I'm providing for this person. I'm the main provider, right? I'm most important, so I have to cherish this self because no one else will, right? That sense like if I'm not selfish, well, I have to be selfish because no one else is looking after myself in the same way. It feels that way, doesn't it? It feels like I have to do that just to survive because, yeah, that's, I guess, one of the reasons we would justify, the reason we would use to justify being selfish. Yeah. But what we don't realize that other sentient beings are equally important for our survival, right? They're equally important for our survival. So again, I mentioned it before, everything right now, our food, just something as simple, so usually the example is something as simple as a bowl of rice. How many beings were involved in that process? And I'm including the insects. And I'm including those people who pick the rice and those who provide the food for those who pick the rice, right? Who harvest the rice. So they're connected to other people who keep them alive and strong. So basically, there's this huge chain of people, sentient beings involved in that process of making that bowl of rice available. We're all interconnected. And again, it's not just the people directly involved in harvesting, in selling, in cleaning and so forth the rice, but also those who keep those healthy, strong and fed, like who take care of it. And then those who do that and those who do that. So I wonder how many people in this world are actually involved. I wish we could have like an AI that could calculate exactly how many people are involved in my breakfast cereal, the bowl of breakfast cereal I had this morning. How many living beings were directly or indirectly involved? Wow, I wonder whether that's like some kind of staggering number of like 1 million or 10 million. Possibly everyone. Because the thing is, we're all interconnected here. I think I once heard this, and this is just Facebook. How does it go with 7? So every Facebook friend you have is distant by way of 7 other people to everyone else. No, how does it go?
7 degrees of separation just to anyone in the world.
7 people of separation of anyone. That doesn't just apply to Facebook, does it?
No.
Oh no. It has nothing. Well, how did I get to?
I don't know if it's true, but that's just like the adage.
Right. So it's like 7 people. As like out of 7, they know each
You
other.
can connect to anyone in the world. This is what they say. I don't know if it's technically true. With 7 people, which is mind-blowing to think about. But
Yeah, it is incredible. So somehow every 7th person we connect to, directly or
If
No?
I want to know the President of the United States,
Yeah.
he is so far away,
Ah,
there will be a way within 7 people,
Someone
I
will-
know
I see.
I will have 7 degrees of separation.
I see. So to know that person, so to know other people, it's about knowing. Okay. So to know someone, there are always 7 people that separate us from. Richard Gere's a little closer.
So even somebody who you think is like really
Yeah, like
away from you.
far away. So even some president of Uruguay.
Everyone here would be to the president 5 people. My friend knows a bunch of people in Washington very close.
Right.
So you're 5 degrees separation.
Yeah, I see. So since I know you and you have a friend who knows some people in Washington, I'm already closer. Okay. And in that way, this applies to everyone in any continent. So it's not just the United States, but any other continent or any other country. Yeah, that's incredible.
You can even think about like somebody who's dying in a war who feels like really far away from you.
Yeah.
Would also be 7 degrees of separation.
So even in that case, there's just 7 people separating us. You see? So then, that is just knowing them, and that's a little harder, but just being connected by way of depending, then it's a lot less than 7. Possibly everyone is somehow involved in that process. I'm not sure everyone, but yeah, anyway, I don't know. But we get the gist of like the idea that everything we get, how many people, I mean the insects, we should also mention them, right? Yes?
I was going to say, I was doing this exercise because I oftentimes when I get food, I immediately start eating it. And I'm trying on this trip to figure out what rituals, routines can I build into my life to have more moments of mindfulness. And outside even, it's like, okay, you think about the origin of the food, but think about the farmer that's farming your potatoes. That morning he had honey, right? Which gave him strength to go farm those potatoes.
Yeah.
And then all the bees that created that honey.
Oh.
So you could take it so far, and
You're
it's
right.
really beautiful to just reflect on that.
That's true. It's not make believe. It's true.
No, it's true.
Yeah. This is really interesting. How I remember, like one of my friends. There's something called tsampa. Do you know tsampa? That Tibetan staple called tsampa, and it's really delicious. It's made of barley, and they fry it, and then they grind it. It's really, really good. It's their staple food, but it's also quite tasty. I love it. And a lot of people do. They really like it. But once. I usually get it from my friends from Ladakh or from Zanskar, and that's even tastier. But the thing is, my friend told me, we should never throw away tsampa. It's so difficult to make it. She said, yeah, it's so hard. They're up in the mountains, cold water, so they have to pick it first, and then they have to clean it, and it has to be dried, and they have to chase away the crows for them not to steal it. And then she said, it's so hard work. Right? And I was thinking, yeah, we look at this potato and go, oh, good old potato, almost like it flew on our plate. But just the farmer, the difficulty of planting it and then watching it. We need to really appreciate all this hardship that went into the food and not throw away food lightheartedly. That's just at the side. But I was reminded of like you were mentioning the farmer and the potato. But anyway, here it's, of course, more directly about everyone being so kind to sentient beings, so many people being involved in producing the clothes I wear. And I think it's a beautiful exercise. I wish we had these AIs that could give us a list and we didn't have to, we could just read it and get a sense.
We have, like I asked ChatGPT.
You just did it?
Yeah.
Which AI did you use?
ChatGPT.
Okay.
The 5th version, they say 435 multicellular, like were directly linked, and then the microbials were like 10 to the power 15 or something.
10 to the power of 3?
15.
15, whoa, 10 to the, wow, that's incredible. So how did you put the question?
How many people are directly or indirectly linked to a cereal of bowl for providing me? So
And
then it came up with 20, I'm like add indirect.
so what was the number of people?
The realistic number was 401.
401, that's all?
Yeah, including people who are actually directly linked, be it factory workers or
Okay. So those are the directly.
just human beings.
Just humans, and they're directly connected, yeah.
And then organisms were just higher.
Oh my God, think about it. When you have a king and 400 people serve a bowl of rice to a king, that's considered to be really incredible, right? He says 401 directly involved. So you have 401 people who are basically all working so hard. So it's almost like these 400 people are lining up here. Here's your bowl for you, right? We would feel so special if that happened to us. But of course, we never meet them, we don't know them. But that's really what it is, 400 people in that bowl of rice. Interesting. And then the ones indirect, as you were saying about the honey, so you had some honey that strengthened them, that kept them healthy, they didn't get a cold, and right? And all the bees, and the people who looked after the bees, and the ones who cleansed the beehive, and then the ones who made the beehive, and the ones who had fed the people who,
You could be like, yeah, the dog that the farmer pet on the way that put a smile on his face also played a part, right? You know, like, it can be anything.
So he paid more attention to all the rice, and he picked all the rice. Yeah, that's true. Dependent arising is like that, or interdependence. We don't pay attention to it. So many nitty-gritty details, but when we do, it's pretty astounding, isn't it? We feel like, oh, I'm here over here against the rest of the world. No, so strongly connected. Yeah. So how are others more or equally important in that our survival depends so strongly on others, and not just on humans. I'm also including insects, because otherwise, even if you were on an island without other humans, if it wasn't for insects, you wouldn't have fruits, you wouldn't have vegetables. I mean, they need to be, what's the word? The bees, what do they do? Pollination. Pollination needs to take place. Like the insects are important for pollination, so certain foods and vegetables you wouldn't have without pollination. Yeah. So, therefore, first of all, food. Our food, clothing, shelter, and everything that is required to sustain us, to keep us healthy, is provided by other sentient beings. It's in dependence on them that we derive resources, that we derive everything we need in life. So, therefore, even something as insignificant as a bowl of rice is dependent on so many living beings. Okay, number one. So, sentient beings are just as important for our own survival than we are. Of course, we are as well. We need to eat to be able to survive. Put the food in our mouth and chew it, yes. But equally, if one of them was missing, we would still die. So if we weren't eating the food and chewing it and whatever, and there was no one to force feed us, we would die, of course. But if it wasn't for other living beings, again, we would not survive. All right. That's number one, mere survival. And then something very important is our education, everything we know. Everything we know. I mean, how many people were involved in that process? We don't remember learning these things. It's almost like we've always known this, that, and the other. But we learned it from our parents, we learned it from our peers, from our siblings, we learned it in school, we learned it from books that we read, from Wikipedia entrances that people had to write fast, and so on and so forth. So everything we know, and the more we know, the easier it gets for us. I mean, there's certain knowledge that's of course ridiculous, not absolutely necessary, but in general we know a lot of the things that are necessary for us to live a reasonably healthy life. I mean, the whole health movement, isn't that amazing? Like, we didn't we didn't grow very old just a few hundred years ago. Well, partly because if you had an if your appendix was appendicitis or something, what's it called? If you had an inflamed appendix, yes, you probably died. Okay, that's one reason. Or women died in childbirth. But a lot of people just didn't know what's the right kind of food. If you eat too much salt, if you eat too much fatty kind of oils, like oily kind of food, or if you eat an imbalanced diet, well, you develop certain conditions that may kill you when you're 40 or 50. We didn't know all this. And now we live so much longer. I mean, I know a lot of Tibetans, when their fast came from Tibet, they just ate all this crappy food. They're like chips, they ate chips. So Tibetans didn't have that health conscious kind of attitude that weren't very health conscious when I first arrived here. And they ate like YY. They would eat YY, like, you know, there's all this MSG. So they put the powder and they mixed them and they cracked the noodles and they ate them like that without even hot water. And then developed terrible gastric problems over the years because that's all they ate, or diabetes or what have you. Nowadays we have all this information, and if we're disciplined enough and we're willing to, we can live much longer just simply because we learn to look after our body. All that knowledge. How many people worked so hard to figure out what is good for us and what's not? It didn't just appear online by itself. It needed years and years of hard work. Incredible. So education, our skills, our abilities, we learned from others. We watched them. A lot of what we learned was because others did it and we just imitated them. If it wasn't for others, we wouldn't even know how to walk straight, right? We learned that. We watched others. You see, like children who grow up in the jungle, they walk and they walk like other animals that they watched. So we can walk straight. So much we can do if it wasn't for others. Did the chai bell ring already?
They don't ring bell for chai.
There's no bell for chai.
They just put it.
Oh, I've been waiting. All right, let's take a chai break. All right.